Trigonometry, like every other area of math, has a variety of applications throughout the real world. And one of the most common applications is something that we call an angle of elevation or an angle of depression. So what this very short video is going to do is going to tell you about what the definitions of angles of elevation and angles of depression are, so that you can overlay right triangles onto real-world contexts and calculate the lengths of segments or distances involved in those contexts. So for this video, we're going to imagine that we're standing in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, looking at the top of the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest freestanding building in the world. And so to see this, we're going to imagine that we're standing right off the edge of one of the highways here. Now from that highway, we have this horizontal line that goes from the base of the building over to us. And we also have our line of sight, which goes from the top of the building down to us there too. And the angle that's made with the horizontal looking up towards the building, this is what we call the angle of elevation. And in just the generic sense of the term, an angle of elevation is the angle made by a horizontal line and an observer's line of sight to an object or a point that's above the horizontal line. So go ahead, pause the video, copy down this definition of angle of elevation, as well as that triangle that we had on the last page, which is an observer, which is represented by the X, looking at the top of the Burj Khalifa from a ways away. This here, that is the angle of elevation. Similarly, we could imagine that somebody is in the building of the Burj Khalifa and looking down in the direction of that same observer. So in this case, because there's no observation all the way up at the top of the spire of the Burj Khalifa, we're going to take the observer in the tower and make them a little bit lower. Let's say they're here. And if they're looking down at that same observer that we saw before, well then their line of sight is there in yellow. And their horizontal line is actually up above the ground rather than at the ground itself. So from the point of view of this observer, the angle that's made with the horizontal and their line of sight is actually below the line. And that is something that we call an angle of depression. An angle of depression is an angle formed by a horizontal line and an observer's line of sight to an object or a point below the horizontal line. Go ahead, pause the video, copy this down, as well as that diagram of the angle that we saw in the last page, where this angle there, because it's with the horizontal, and with a line of sight that's below the horizontal, is called an angle of depression. So go ahead, pause the video, copy this down, and then you have what you need to answer some of the application problems in the next series of skills practices using angles of elevation and depression.